So a big thank you, Garrick. I think if my wife can hear me, she'll be wondering why there was now strange humming noises coming from my office. But interesting that will stimulate our vagus nerve and release our brain chemicals. So now we're ready to dive into our second panel of the day. And it's my pleasure to introduce Pamay Bassay, Noah Rabinowitz, and Sanyin Siang. Three people for who I have a huge respect and admiration. Pamay is the Chief Learning and Diversity Officer at Kraft Heinz. She's achieved incredible results in championing and developing the learning culture there at Kraft Heinz. Lots that we can all learn from what she's done there. She has a background with private equity at BlackRock, and super relevant for today, she happens to just have a degree from Stanford on symbolic symbols and artificial intelligence. So great to have you with us, Pamay.
Nice to be here. Thanks so much.
Yep. Next up, we also have Noah. Noah is Chief Learning Officer at Commonwealth Fusion Systems, where he's helping to discover fusion power of the source for future clean energy. He's previously been the CLO at Moderna, solving the COVID crisis. So you can see Noah has a theme of very meaty, impactful roles. And before that, he was CLO at Intel, arguably building the chips that power a lot of the things that we're talking about today. He's also been heavily involved in a project called the CLO Lift, aimed at upskilling learning leaders as well. So welcome, Noah.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And last but not least, on our second panel is Sanyin Siang. Sanyin is the world's #1 coach, and she's just back from London last week, the Thinkers 50 Gala, where she was recognized as a coaching legend, which I think is absolutely well-deserved. She also leads Duke University's Coach K Leadership and Ethics Center. She's board director, she's CEO, she's CEO and board and startup advisor, and speaker and investor as well. Plenty that keeps her busy. On top of all of that, she's also writing and researching about superpowers, of which curiosity is one of the most powerful. So great to have you with us, Sanyin. So first off, let's start with what each of your views are on the opportunity that generative AI presents. So maybe Pamay, if I could come to you first.
Goodness, what a great question. I mean, I think the first thing is that we're learning every day what the opportunity is that generative AI presents. And we think about the fact, as you mentioned, that ChatGPT came out just a year ago, and so much has changed. I think one of the things that's very neat is that, AI, of course, is not new. Gen AI is the newest kind of instantiation of the technology. And we're seeing every day how people are using it to get smarter, to do things that humans didn't want to do, to do first drafts of things, to figure out how they can have one-on-one coaches. So I think the opportunity really is for us to continue to experiment, to see what it can take off our plates, if you will. And I'm speaking specifically around kind of down the middle of the road, because these are most people, as I'm in L&D, and my colleagues and my employees are not going to be talking about like military applications or the impact it's going to have on world elections or any of the things, the very big issues that are, if you want to say opportunity, might be a different flavor. But for all of us who are just trying to figure out how this technology is going to change our life, it's a huge opportunity to figure out how we can our lives can be improved if we engage in the right way.
I'm excited to see what some of those improvements looks like. Noah, what are your thoughts on the opportunity that it presents?
So I'm a lifelong learning professional, like most of your guests today, and I love talking about the role of AI in learning. I think one other perspective to look at it from is the impact to science, and solving really big problems that we need to solve fast. I think the previous panel talked about the impact of AI to speed and efficiency of our work. When you're working on something like climate change, for example, or on medical discovery, speed matters. There are lives on the line. Our planet is on the line. So anything we can do to become better, faster, more efficient, and to learn at the speed that we need to learn at, it's not a luxury anymore. I mean, these are existential issues that we're dealing with, and so the role that AI can play in science and engineering is just incredibly impactful, incredibly important to us.
I'll come back to you in a minute to dive a little bit deeper into that in your current context as well.
Sure.
Sanyin, your thoughts on what sorts of opportunities Gen AI presents for us?
I think just as in the past, every time there's a new technology, there are new opportunities and new possibilities, as what we've heard the previous panelists talked about. However, along with that, those possibilities can only be for the good if we are also thinking about the alignment of what it means to be human and doubling down on the things that make us human. One possibility, for example, in my world of leadership with generative AI is looking at it as perception, right? How can we be informed if it has all this data on how we're perceived? Because we as human beings, organizations, we all have our blind spots. So it's a perceptive aspects I think are really interesting in addition to the predictive. But my first job out of college was really at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, looking at the ethical, legal, and scientific implications of technologies before they become possibilities. And that's what I'm also excited to talk about and dive into with the panelists today.
Love that, how we're perceived, because that's something that I see from my own use of generative AI is if you prompt it correctly, it gives you an honest answer back around something. So to tell it to be brutally candid about something and or particularly constructive, and that's one area where it doesn't have the filter that we have as humans in glossing things up, which is interesting to see from a perception perspective. So what are your own experiences in it? So maybe Pamay, in terms of your day job at Kraft Heinz, so how are you experiencing Gen AI there, and how are you encouraging it across the organization?
Sure. I mean, as a learning professional, it became very clear very quickly that it was my job. I was looking around to say who was going to start the conversation around AI at this organization. And I said, oh, I think it's me, right? And so one of the previous panelists, Mike, said a lot of people are not taking the time to engage in experimentation with these tools. They kind of hear, it feels like it's going to be a wave. It's just happening. And like, okay, one day I'll wake up and, these technologies will evolve. But we decided at Kraft Heinz we want to have a global conversation around AI, understanding that Gen AI is not the first instantiation of AI that we've been using as a company. So we have a construct called University Day. It's a 24-hour day of learning where we literally around the clock learn so that everyone can learn in their own time zone. And this year we focused that 24-hour day of learning on AI. We wanted to do a couple of things. One, just level set so everyone knows what is AI, just define. We had a very AI 101 conversation. We invited colleagues from across the organization to say what's already happening at Kraft Heinz that uses AI, whether it is predictive or generative or that's machine learning, just to help people understand that these things are already happening, and here are the types of projects and the types of pilots and the types of things are being used at our company. And the last one was really to help people understand how AI could affect them personally and professionally. And I wanted to make sure, we are a very large company. We had legal at the table to say, hey, here are the guardrails, here are the guidelines, don't put, sensitive information into ChatGPT, et cetera, but really just trying to help people understand, get in there. The Curiosity Forum is a wonderful title, be curious. And the flip side of that emerged was have discernment, right? It has always been important to know and think about the right questions to ask, to look at the answers you're getting and say, does this make any sense? Just like one of the previous panelists was saying, if I get a phone call from someone who sounds like my mother saying, please send money, can I think, is this something that my mother would do? Is my mother sitting right next to me, et cetera? So it is curiosity and discernment. So we wanted to make sure that we gave people the opportunity to level set, understand what all of this was, and just get in there and be curious and start experimenting. And so that's what's happening at Kraft Heinz.
I think that's another word for the discernment. We have criticality as one of our 7 C's in the book, and I see the need for that critical eye of applying critical thinking into what we're seeing is becoming more and more necessary with some of the advancements. No, so you talked about using Gen AI for the advancement of science. I mean, in your organization anyway, you're working towards the goal of clean energy, which is one of the ultimate advancements of science. So how are you seeing Gen AI used within your organization at Commonwealth Fusion Systems?
I think when you apply AI to harder and bigger problems, it becomes harder to use it. So often we talk about AI used to help me with my writing, or to provide a little bit of feedback, or to improve something, or to generate a next iteration on a thought. And those are kind of micro applications that can really help an individual do their work better. When you're talking about massive engineering, decades-long engineering challenges that are first-time endeavors, AI can play a role in all kinds of aspects of that work, but it takes engineering to put AI into the engineering. You can't just open up an application and prompt a question and get the answer that you're looking for. You have to design it in and build it into the systems and the engineering plan, the schedule, the software engineering, the hardware engineering. It's a much more complex use of AI. Now the power of it is there, and like I mentioned, it can speed things up. It can manage tasks at a velocity that people cannot, but it still requires hard work to put it in, and I think that is a new field. So I think there's exploration happening, but it's not just at the fingertips the way a lot of us think about AI in other use cases and contexts.
So a 50-word prompt is not going to deliver the magical solution to how we achieve fusion energy.
No.
So Sanyin, I mean, you work with a lot of leaders as well. How have you been guiding them around how they should approach this notion of Gen AI within their organizations?
So something I think about, I mean, I'll come at it from 2 points of views, right? So one is, before ChatGPT was available, I already have a sense of what I came into AI. My first exposure to generative AI was actually through my sister, Connie Bakshi. Connie is one of the top AI generative artists in the world today. And she had talked to me about like AI generative art. What's that? And the way she explained it is AI is more of a paintbrush. Instead of a paintbrush, AI is a paintbrush, and it's about trying different prompts and understanding and experimenting and co-learning together, so that even different artists may be using the same data sets, but it'll be depending on how it's prompt. Just as an artist uses paintbrush in different ways, it will generate slightly nuanced responses, different responses. So my first experience with ChatGPT was just testing out. I'm developing a superpowers tool, and I said, okay, I wonder if it's curiosity, right? We approach this individually as scientists. I wonder what would happen if I put in this particular prompt. But instead of it being a singular, here's thing, and here's the answer, and here's, it stops there. I wonder what would happen if I try and ask the question in a different way. Would I get the same answers? Would I get different answers? Right? And what I discovered was it was co-learning with me the same, all along. And that was fascinating. So we can't look at as even these micro applications as a singular, but actually as a series in which it's learning, it's building one on top of the other. And I think that leads to very interesting possibilities. Now, the other aspect I think about when it comes to leadership, I think about social media as one of the technologies that's truly disrupted how we lead today, in the sense that Henry Timms wrote about power, and social media has shifted the power from the institutions to the individuals. Positional power doesn't have as much weight as it did 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I think with AI, the speed at which it can come up with ideas and connect ideas across huge data sets, I think what that means is knowledge is now a commodity. Expertise is now a commodity. But what we need to double down on is connection and curation and cross-pollination, relationships, because that's where AI can't yet go. It's smart, but there's different types of smart. We're talking about the relational superpowers and the virtue superpowers here.
So we need to be developing some of those superpowers across our people to be able to help them to navigate, which maybe leads me nicely onto the next question, Pamay. I'll come back to you. It sounds like within Kraft Heinz, you mentioned your university and this sort of 24-hour day of Gen AI. So how else are you getting people ready, if you like, for generative AI within the organization? So what sorts of things are you doing to either create the environment or build the skills so that people can take advantage?
It's a good question. I mean, I'll be honest and say we're at the beginning of that journey. I think one of the reasons why we had that 24 hours of learning is because it seemed like time was just passing and nothing, like someone has to do something so that we don't feel like we're not upskilling folks. So there's two things. One, am I upskilling my team? Is my team learning how, as learning professionals, to create more engaging learning experiences more effectively, more efficiently, whatever it is that this new technology is going to help us evolve as learning professionals? That was the one thing. But the other thing was, how can we make sure that everybody at the organization also is, not just, I mean, everyone has so much to do already. It's easy to just kind of put your head down and keep doing what you do. You lift your head and all of a sudden the whole world has changed. So it was those two things. And I will say that I'm happy that we've started a conversation. We'll continue. For example, I just saw the announcement that now you could create your own GPTs and skills, and I'm like, okay, I'm having an offsite with my leadership team. Let's get in there and practice. Now, of course, again, guardrails, we can't do it on our work computers, et cetera, but how can I make sure that, which seems very relevant to what we do as learning professionals, right? How can we make sure that we are learning how to use those tools? And so we're not just staying kind of in the old school and doing things in ways that are now becoming obsolete.
And it's great to see that you sort of grasped the mantle within Kraft Heinz to drive that forward. I think one of the things with Gen AI is it's not always clear where it should be led, if you like, in terms of which function. Should it come through IT? Should it come through ethics area? Should it come through strategy? Should it come through HR? Noah, I know you've been doing some work within the CLO lift work around the sort of drive. What are your views on sort of who should drive forward the Gen AI agenda?
That's a great question. So L&D has for many decades had what I call shiny object syndrome. We love the new thing, and AI is not a new thing, but that a lot of the tools that are being driven by AI are very new, and we're chasing tools, and if you don't understand how to work with wood, you can get the best new tools and you're still not going to be a good carpenter. Yeah. And or I can give you the best ingredients in the world, and if you don't know how to cook, you're not going to make anything very good. And I think in L&D, we've sacrificed some really basic problems to chase new shiny objects. And so the CLO lift effort is to go back to the most fundamental challenges that we face in learning. For example, how we govern learning in large, complex organizations. We haven't figured that out. How we invest and capitalize on the time investments that we make into learning, because that surpasses by orders of magnitude the hard investments we make into learning. Time is the biggest allocation we make into learning, and then, as we've been talking about, how we really aggressively go after new skill areas and make a material impact in an organization in a matter of months, not years. And until we can do that as a community across companies, across industries, and that we can prove that we really have strong skills and capabilities to drive that. I don't know if we're ready to own something as big as AI skilling for an entire organization. So I would love to say yes, but I think we have to go back to some basics. And I think we also, one of the things that I think is tough for being in learning is there's no common standard whatsoever. If you're a CFO, you can compare your work to other CFOs. You can't do that as a CLO. Everybody's running a different race. Everybody's got a different strategy. And so there's no ability to compare. What does good look like? And in the absence of that, we often just chase new. Newness becomes value. And I know that's a long answer to your question, but that's what CLO Lift is trying to address. It's trying to tackle the most fundamental problems, go back to basics, so that when there are new tools coming online, as there will be forever, we know how to use them, and we know how to use them for good and for the purpose and mission that we've set ourselves out to tackle.
Agree. Yeah. Keep comments coming in the chat as well, and your questions there too. Sanyin, when you're sort of advisory capacity, where you're working with boards, with CEOs, etc., is there any guidance that or any steer that you're giving them for how they should navigate? And should it be CEO driving something? Should they, empower their leadership teams? Any words of wisdom and from the conversations that you've been having there?
Well, while I haven't had the conversation with CEOs I'm working with about AI, I think that's coming pretty soon. I can step back a bit and just double down on what Noah and Pamay were talking about, which is, for everything, don't conflate the end with the means to the end, right? So have clarity around what is it we're trying to achieve, where we want people to go, and now what are the range of tools that is in alignment with our ethos and our organization that can help get us there. AI is just it is a tool. It is not an end. It is a means to a particular end. So how would that fit into our larger toolbox of things that we have at our disposal to be able to drive to our mission, to our purpose, to what's meaningful? Those are the type of things we have to think about for any new technologies, any new tools, not just AI.
So don't confuse the means to get there with the end in itself, which I think ties to Noah's shiny object syndrome that we're often guilty of falling into that trap. There's a great question in the chat here, which Pamay, I'll bring to you with the second part of your role beyond learning of also diversity. So question from Tracy around, in leading the charge for Gen AI adoption, how do you prioritize diversity and inclusion, ensuring that the benefits of AI are accessible to a broad range of perspectives and backgrounds?
It's a really great question. I mean, I think you can't have a conversation about AI without someone bringing up the idea that, we're training on the data that exists in the world, and the world, there's a lot of bias embedded into the world, a lot of discrimination. We are, what we don't want to do is amplify those things with the use of this new technology. I think that is, whether it's discernment or critical thinking, where it's so important to say, if you are interacting with this technology and you receive some sort of information, if I ask a question, I get a response, you have to think critically. Hey, wait, is there, just like you do with interacting with humans, is there bias baked into this answer? Is this something that I need to somehow, edit because I know that this particular large language model was trained on data that had bias baked into it? But I think larger than that, there are organizations that are working on this. I ran into a gentleman who's working on a large language model that's affectionately called Black GPT, where they're training it not necessarily on just data in the world, but also on Black and Brown history and culture, and working with HBCUs to make sure that this is a different it's trained in a different way. And I'm super excited to learn more about that. I think you just have to have eyes open and know this is an issue, and look for opportunities to work with, partner, to amplify those who are doing work to counter, both to counter bias in the models and also, to your point, making sure there's access, because of course there's going to be differentiated access to this technology. It's just that's the world that we live in. Just to be aware of all of these different issues and try to be a force for good and not kind of put your head in the sand around these issues as well.
That's great. Thanks, Pamay. So we're coming close to time. So maybe I hear just closing words from each of you with any sort of words of advice for organizations exploring Gen AI based on your own experiences or your own thoughts. So maybe if I come to you first, Sanyin, any words of advice for people exploring Gen AI?
So because we don't know the full range of what it can yet do or how we can yet use it, we go back to curiosity, right? So when I was at IIIS, we look at how do we understand the ethical, legal, social implications of technologies, behavioral genetics or cloning before they become full realities. We bring people across all different industries and sectors, religious leaders to scientists and lawyers and media to come together in a room so we can get a fuller big picture, right? Because we're all seeing it from our particular lens. And to really understand how we can leverage something in a way that is responsible and as a force for good, we actually have to bring in a diversity of perspectives. So I would encourage, as the audience is continuing to engage in forums such as the Curiosity Forum, to personally go out and talk with a broad swath of people and gain different perspectives so you can be informed about what are the possibilities and be imaginative, as well as what are the alignments and the guardrails that we need to put into place.
I love it. Be curious about that diversity of perspectives. Yeah. Noah, any final words of wisdom, words of advice?
I love that too. I love, a diversity of perspectives as one great ambition for us in this work. I think one of those perspectives is have an engineer's mindset. We talk so much about exploration with AI. I don't think that means anything goes. And I don't think that means just, today I'm trying this, tomorrow I'm doing that. It's game on for build use cases, have an engineer's mindset, have some discipline, have a plan, test and learn continuously. But it's not, there's just too much out there for us, and it can be a little overwhelming if we don't engineer it to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with mission and purpose. So it's still, exploration doesn't mean we give up the discipline and we give up structure and rigor. And I think there's an opportunity to bring stronger use cases into L&D, specifically the way we do AI.
Thanks, Noah. And Pamay, your words of advice.
I think some of the conversations like this that I've been in with learning professionals, there's been this feeling like, oh, wow, I'm so behind. And I would say if there's one thing that I would say to those listening, especially as you're listening to experts on these various panels, some of which were, obviously have been studying this for a long time, is things are moving so fast that everyone is behind in some way, shape, or form. There may be one person who's like, I know all the things about AI, but everyone is learning, and because things are changing so much. And so I would just say, get in there, curiosity, of course, experiment, make sure that you are not just allowing time to go by, because there's still plenty of time to get in there and learn how this is going to affect us as humans. And I would also say that, when we talk about who should lead this in organizations, there's always a value in, if it's not clear who should lead, I could just get the right people in a room, right? I could just say, hey, can someone from legal show up? Can someone from IT show up? Can someone from learning show up? And we're having conversations about what's happening and how this is affecting us. Because again, there's no single source of the truth as we're watching these technologies evolve. So I would just encourage people to stay aware, realize that, this is going to change the way we live and learn. And there's no time like the present to get in and figure out what's going on and how you can contribute to the conversation. So.
Big thank you, Pamay. And my own one is, trying to keep up to date with it. And in fact, Jaden, who's on our next panel, he's got his podcast, ChatGPT podcast, which has 1 million listens, I think. And that's my own personal way to stay up to date, because he probably has his finger on the pulse of this more than anyone else in terms of the most up to date thinking. So big thank you, Sanyin, Pamay, Noah. Fascinating conversations, as always. Great words of advice. And with that, we'll bring to close this panel. Thank you.